coverage you can count on. This is a WAAY 31 News special presentation. Apollo 11's 50th anniversary, celebrating Huntsville's lunar legacy.
The party is on. A live look at downtown Huntsville right now. Thousands of people celebrating our history and excited for the future.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Words rooted in history, thrusting Huntsville into the national spotlight. Just like tonight, Huntsville celebrated and partied. Wernher von Braun made this promise in 1969.
And maybe one day we'll have a man on Mars. Thank you.
Tonight, we look to the future, from Apollo to NASA's next project, Artemis.
We are, in fact, the Artemis generation.
NASA and Huntsville readying for the next 50 years, making history, landing a woman on the moon and sending humans to Mars.
But we're in the right place. We're training for it and ready to go.
We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
And we are live in downtown Huntsville at 6:30, where the city is coming together to celebrate 50 years since that historic Apollo 11 launch and moonwalk happening right now. The Dancing in the Streets block party at the Madison County Courthouse. We have live bands, DJs, plenty of music, plenty of food, plenty of things to do. Of course, the party runs until 9 o'clock. So why are we here? Well, of course, we are here to celebrate 50 years since man walked on the moon. More specifically, 50 years since the crew of Apollo 11, Command Module Pilot Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin, the two men who actually took those first steps on the moon, planted that American flag and returned safely to Earth. Thank you for joining us tonight on this historic event. I am WAAY 31 News anchor Dan Schaefer. It's this time 50 years ago on July 19th. Aldrin, Armstrong, and Collins were still headed towards the moon. Here are some of the important dates to remember. July 16th, of course, 1969. That's when the three astronauts blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida, atop that mighty Saturn V rocket. It took them 4 days still to reach the moon. On July 20th, 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin made their famous moonwalk, and it was July 24th, 1969, when all three astronauts splashed down safely on Earth. This is how Huntsville celebrated their hometown hero, Dr. Wernher von Braun and his team. Thousands lined the streets of Huntsville for a parade and celebration which ended at the Madison County Courthouse. It's something no country had ever done before, putting man on the moon, and Dr. von Braun made sure to recognize the city that made it all happen.
We knew that the city of Huntsville was solidly behind us, and with your continued support, I will see you back in orbit with that new space station, to which we will all ride in a reusable launch vehicle, and maybe one day we'll have a man on Mars. Thank you.
Unfortunately, less than 10 years later, Dr. von Braun passed away, never getting to see the first pieces of that International Space Station launched aboard the Space Shuttle in 1998, or hear the directive to even build it. 50 years later, Huntsville is throwing a party in the same place, right here in front of the Madison County Courthouse in downtown Huntsville. Right now, on every block of the square, you'll find different types of music. You can hear some of it playing in the background. 2 bands, 2 DJs. All of them, believe it or not, are employees of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Each block is themed to a different decade, in fact, all celebrating the Apollo missions. Just about 30 minutes ago, this was the scene. Take a look here at the courthouse. There was a parade that stepped off at the Von Braun Center with a replica of a lunar rover from later Apollo missions that made its way all the way here, about a mile down the road to the square. Once the rover got here, beach balls made to look like the moon were thrown off the top of the courthouse onto the street below. And tonight, to finish off the party in the square, there will be a digital mapping event. It'll take place on the side of the building here. The projection will show the Rocket City's involvement in man's first steps on the moon, along with Apollo 11 footage and, of course, some glimpses of Wernher von Braun himself. That experience will wrap up tonight's party at 9 o'clock. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that tonight's party to celebrate 50 years since the Apollo 11 moon landing takes up 4 blocks here in downtown Huntsville around the courthouse. Each block has a different theme associated with it. Right now, WAAY 31's Marie Waxel is on the north side of the courthouse. Marie, what's happening there?
Dan, I'm over here where the 60s is taking place. We are back, reverted back, I'm going to say to 1969, because that is what we are partying like it's 1969 here tonight. I'm going to step out of the way and just show you the crowd. They're playing right now. I think the dancers have kind of taken a break for a few songs, but I promise you they had a line of them going here just a few minutes ago. They're taking a little water break right now. You see some shoulder tapping, some shoulder shrugging, some feet tapping. We've got people of all ages coming out here reminiscing, just having a good time. And of course our four-legged friends out here too. Everybody's staying hydrated. And you know what you don't see? You don't see anyone without a smile on their face. It is truly an incredible time to be here in Huntsville, an incredible night, and there is still plenty of time left to get out here and enjoy it. It really is something to see. Dan, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Marie. It certainly is a great night to be in the Rocket City, USA. Marie, of course, not the only one checking out the festivities. WAAY 31 Stephen Dilsizian is also here. He's talking with people who are helping celebrate Apollo 11's golden anniversary as well. Stephen?
Yeah, Dan, right now I'm on the west side of the courthouse where everybody on this side is celebrating, well, the next mission, the SLS, the space launch system that will hopefully bring the first woman to the moon out on 2024. Now, right behind me, everybody is surrounding this NASA tent. It seems like this is where a majority of the activity has been since I've been here now for about an hour. Everybody's reading up on the SLS and getting prepared. They're happy to see the celebration for Apollo 11, but these guys on this side are ready to celebrate the next mission. Guys, I'm going to send it back over to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Stephen. In fact, you can see behind me, this is a big blow-up version of the SLS. A lot of folks taking advantage of that, getting some great pictures. We're covering every block of the courthouse square this evening as we celebrate Apollo 11's mission. Right now, WAAY 31's Cody Fisher is on the east side of the courthouse. Cody?
Yeah, Dan, right now I'm sitting in a moon buggy, which is a part of the Human Exploration Rover Challenge that happens every spring here at UAH. I'm actually sitting here with my buddy Devin. Devin, you having a good time? Oh, he just gave me a good smile. And so I'm actually on the east side square at the corner of Randolph Avenue. I'm just going to roll on forward here closer to the camera. But this rover just shows exactly what type of interactive things that they have for kids like Devin and families. But I just want to pan over here to show you the rest of the east side square. There are hundreds and hundreds of people here. There's a lot to do. There's a NASA booth up that way. There's a DJ playing 80s music. And everybody seems to be having a good time. But Dan, I'm going to send it back over to you.
Thanks a lot. Looks like a lot of fun. Thanks, Cody. Over the week now, there were different events celebrating the Apollo 11 moon mission, the 50th anniversary, of course. One of those happened at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center on Tuesday when thousands gathered to witness history of our own. Take a look at this. The center attempted to launch 5,000 paper and plastic rockets simultaneously, hoping to break the world record of 4,231. The rockets all blasted off just a few minutes after 8:30 in the morning, just like the Saturn V did 50 years ago on that date. For some people, this record attempt was something they just couldn't miss.
We heard about it probably about a month ago on Facebook.
And you just had to be here.
We had to be here. It looked like an interesting experience for my girls, something that we can't do in Atlanta.
This definitely is something that I'll remember forever. I thought that was the most amazing thing I've seen. It looked like a bunch of fireworks.
It really was. Now, the Space and Rocket Center says it could take 3 or 4 months before that record is actually verified. Another way the Rocket City is celebrating 50 years of Apollo 11 is with a homecoming dinner. Former astronaut Buzz Aldrin, second man to walk on the moon, was at that event. It's an annual event. That dinner happened Wednesday night at the Space and Rocket Center. Aldrin was there to accept a Distinguished Aerospace Service Award. He received a standing ovation, despite his speech that had a somewhat negative tone concerning our advances, or lack thereof in his opinion, in space. That dinner, by the way, part of the Aerospace States Association Policy Summit, which helps aerospace industry leaders connect with state-level politicians for funding. Just moments ago, we showed you the parade featuring the moon buggy that drove here at the courthouse, but we got our first look at it actually Saturday at a car show. It's a replica of the Lunar rover used on the moon by several Apollo missions and was created by Huntsville company Polaris. That moon buggy replica is made from a variety of Polaris parts. It'll make its way all across the state for more parades, hoping to inspire the next generation of innovators. If you come out here tonight, you can actually see that very rover. Now, you can see We're live here at the courthouse, of course, downtown Huntsville. Party is obviously far from over. It doesn't end till about 9 o'clock tonight. In fact, you still have plenty of time to celebrate even throughout this upcoming weekend. Take a look at some of the events that we'll be celebrating. Tomorrow, there's going to be a Pass the Torch panel discussion about the Marshall Space Flight Center's role in landing men on the moon. That takes place at 2:30 at the Space and Rocket Center. Also tomorrow, Rocket City Summerfest Moon Landing Concert. That kicks off at 7 p.m. at the Space and Rocket Center. And to cap it all off, there will be a fireworks show to celebrate the day the astronauts landed and walked on the moon. That takes place at UAH's campus starting at 8:30 p.m. Now, while Huntsville is literally celebrating in the streets today for the Apollo 11 50th anniversary, we can't help but talk about all the work that goes into actually launching a rocket. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to travel down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, to the Kennedy Space Center and saw part of what it takes to make a rocket go up in the air.
We're actually standing in a historic building. It's called the Huntsville Operations Support Center.
Jennifer Vollmer is part of the team that will clear SLS for launch next year.
Liftoff.
She told us since the earliest rocket launches, nothing blasts off from Florida without a go from engineers sitting behind these consoles here in Alabama.
We are a part of every mission that launches. Since we designed the rocket here in Huntsville, we have unique expertise in order to help the launch control team troubleshoot any issues that may arise.
Starting 48 hours prior to liftoff, Launch Control here at Marshall is in direct contact with the team that sits here at Kennedy.
This room was the launch control firing room for Apollo 11.
Firing Room 1 at Kennedy Space Center has changed a lot since that historic launch in 1969. Now filled with flat screens and fiber optics, it's technologically light years away from the crowded consoles crammed in here in the late 60s. What hasn't changed is the bond to Huntsville, more than 600 miles away.
They've got a team of folks that are in the background that are supporting them if they have a problem, if they have an issue, if they see something that they don't understand.
Dozens of systems are being monitored by specialists in both control rooms.
Yes, I hear you 5 by 5.
When data parameters go out of bounds, they start talking immediately.
We've been building this rocket and designing it for 10 years, so we have a lot of history and a lot of test data that we can go back and look to see if anything like this has ever happened before.
It's invaluable information that can mean the difference between a successful launch and a scrub, meaning costly delays.
And that team is critical to how we are able to deal with any issues that come up during launch countdown.
Now, those firing rooms at the Launch Control Center at both Kennedy and here in Huntsville are being modified right now. They're being updated for a new generation of rockets and spacecraft, including the SLS and Orion. Over the past several months, WAAY 31 has worked to gather multiple stories all surrounding NASA and the Apollo 11 anniversary. A lot of that content you'll find on WAAYTV.com. You'll find a story about the first African-American engineers to work at NASA. There's also stories about the people who made models of rockets before they went into full production, and they still do. A lot of those models are out here tonight, in fact, and you can still find that and more on WAAYTV.com. Just go to the drop-down menu and then to Apollo 50. We're just getting started here on a special look back at Apollo 11's 50th anniversary celebration. Up next, we're going to take you back to Cape Canaveral, Florida, where I had the opportunity to visit NASA earlier this year. Some of its most famous buildings and equipment that helped make Apollo 11 a reality. And we're also going to talk with the head man at NASA, his plans for the future, and the director of Marshall Space Flight Center, Jody Singer, and Huntsville's role in the next moon mission.
You're watching WAAY 31's special coverage of Apollo 11's 50th anniversary, celebrating Huntsville's lunar legacy. Brought to you by Radiance Technologies. WAAY 31 honors the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing.
I'm WAAY 31 Chief Meteorologist Kate McKenna. You know the drill. When travelers come back into the U.S., they have to go through customs to declare items brought back with them. Astronauts are no exception. The Apollo 11 crew had to fill out forms declaring the moon rocks and dust they brought back to Earth.
Keep watching WAAY 31 for more information on Apollo 11's 50th anniversary. WAAY 31's Apollo 11 50th anniversary coverage is brought to you by Radiance Technologies.
As we look forward to the future of the space program, we came here to Cape Canaveral, Florida. This has obviously played an important role in space exploration through the years, and specifically the Apollo 11 moon mission. Behind me is the Vehicle Assembly Building. This is where the Saturn V rocket was pieced together vertically after it was brought from Huntsville. Vice President Mike Pence was in Huntsville back in March of this year, leading a meeting of the National Space Council. He ordered the U.S. to put a man and woman on the lunar surface by 2024.
After spending more than 45 years in low Earth orbit, President Trump and our entire administration believe that it is time to push onward to new horizons.
Leaders at Marshall Space Flight Center and right here at Kennedy are already working to make that plan a reality. And just as America's first missions to the moon were called Apollo, our next ventures into space will be called Artemis. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine explains the significance of that name.
50 years after Apollo, it comes to our attention that Apollo had a twin sister who also happens to be the goddess of the moon. And in this new program we call Artemis, named after Apollo's twin sister. The Artemis program is not just a program. It is an idea. It is a concept. It is a new generation. We are, in fact, the Artemis generation.
Part of that plan includes the SLS, the Space Launch System. It's the largest rocket ever built. It's being developed and managed at Marshall Space Flight Center. Many companies in Huntsville have contracts to build parts of the SLS. The first launch is scheduled for 2020 from Launch Pad 39B right here at Cape Canaveral. The big launch, though, that's the 2024 date when we send Americans back to the moon. We recently sat down with Marshall Space Flight Center Director Jody Singer to talk about that moon launch, the next 50 years, and Huntsville's role.
I would say, number one, it starts with what we're working on today, which is the Space Launch System, the most powerful rocket that will take us into deep space and take the humans and the systems that we need. Then from there becomes the exploration, where we continue to explore. We get closer to the moon again. We go back. We set up civilization. We make a sustainable presence. And from there, we learn more about the science. We learn more about technology. The Space Launch System is definitely the capability that sets it in motion.
Jody Singer also mentioned to us that parts of the SLS are already here in Florida. Crews are now working to piece it all together in anticipation of that 2020 launch. Welcome back. A live look right now from the WAAY 31 Sky Tracker of the dance party happening around the Courthouse Square in downtown Huntsville. We are here celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch and moon landing. Every block around the square represents a different decade, a different era. NASA themes, bands playing. You can hear them in the background. The party wraps up here at 9 o'clock. Then a post-launch celebration will take place until 11 at Big Spring Terrace. Now, you heard a moment ago earlier from NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. He was talking about the significance of the name Artemis and its relationship to Apollo. Well, to get Artemis off the ground, to get that program to lift off and be successful, it'll cost between $20 and $30 billion over the next 5 years. Now, that money is on top of the space agency's current budget, which is about $20 billion annually. NASA says that money is needed to create a sustainable presence on the moon. That's important if we ever want to travel to Mars, with astronauts staying on Mars for up to 2 years. So they'll use time on the moon to learn how to live and thrive in another world's atmosphere. Despite already announcing more money would be needed to get the SLS off the ground, a report from the Government Accountability Office says it's grossly over budget already and in danger of not meeting deadlines. NASA pushed the SLS timeline up at Vice President Mike Pence's visit back in March. The Accountability Office says SLS is now $1.8 billion over budget. That is more than the amount of money that NASA says it needs from Congress to make the mission happen. Now, President Trump, you may remember, did announce before NASA said it needed more money that he plans to add $1.6 billion to its budget. However, the budget still has to be approved by Congress. Now, while NASA made history some 50 years ago with the Apollo 11 mission, they, of course, didn't do it alone. There were thousands of private companies, both large and small, many of them right here in the city of Huntsville and in surrounding cities that supplied critical parts and services. We got a look inside one small company at the research park that was there for the Apollo missions and is now also helping launch humans to space again with those upcoming Artemis missions.
There's no room for error in what we do. The smallest contamination can once again be a catastrophic failure type events.
Catastrophic failure. That's Jason Bailey's nice way of saying explosion. And what he and his handful of employees at TMC, Technical Micronics Control, do is ensure that doesn't happen.
These larger vats typically contain cleaning agents or acids.
What they do here is precision clean parts for rocket engines, using clean suits, clean rooms, acid and alcohol baths, high-pressure jets, and constant quality control to specifications that only rocket scientists would appreciate.
Particles or any kind of contamination, oils and greases react violently with liquid oxygen, and liquid oxygen is a basic component of every rocket engine.
TMC first started cleaning rocket engine parts in 1965 for the Apollo missions. Using chemicals in those high-pressure jets, they remove microscopic contaminants in pipes, tubes, and fittings. Bailey says it's not engineering, but it is a vital and valuable service.
The performance of the rocket engines is reliant on what TMC does. Precision cleaning is basic to the rocket industry.
Okay, this is a flex tube for the fuel system on the rocket.
Michael Denny has been with TMC for 5 years. Today he was working on a part for the SLS that will launch Americans back to the moon in 2024. Boeing is a lead contractor, and TMC was just named one of its suppliers of the year, based on their technical expertise, quality work, and delivery performance. It's a responsibility Denny doesn't take lightly.
We don't want nothing going up that costs people's life.
It's work this company of fewer than 20 employees takes seriously, from Apollo to Artemis, from the very beginning of space travel through the coming exploration of deep space.
People looks at us and y'all just a small company and all that, sure, but we're dealing with people's lives. If they go up in space, we don't want nothing to happen.
In late June, the third of 4 engines for the SLS core stage was delivered to NASA. The first launch of the SLS, by the way, is scheduled for next year. Of course, the SLS being designed and tested right here by Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. TMC, by the way, is just one of many companies in Huntsville that play some role in NASA's space program. But keep in mind, with some of the companies actually building parts of SLS located in different areas of the country, but they all have a footprint here with smaller facilities in North Alabama. Those companies include Boeing, Aerojet Rocketdyne, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and Teledyne Brown Engineering. And in May, Huntsville company Dynetics was picked as one of 11 that will conduct studies and produce prototypes of the human landers to be used in the Artemis missions on board the SLS. Thank you for joining us tonight for this special look back at Apollo 11's historic landing on the moon, looking back at Apollo 11, 50 years since the landing, and how the Rocket City is looking forward to the future, and of course our role in the launch of the SLS. Right now on WAAYTV.com, under the Apollo 11 section, you can find both today's special and Monday's special. We hope you'll enjoy that. You'll also find other exclusive web-based content from our trip to Florida and other stories we've done on Apollo 11's golden anniversary. Come on out here. The party lasts until 9 o'clock tonight. Congratulations, Huntsville. Come out and celebrate with your friends and neighbors. It's a great time. And thank you again. I'm WAAY 31 News Anchor Dan Schaefer. From all of us at WAAY 31, have a great night.